Welcome to this webinar. So, good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar entitled Navigating Current Challenges in Museum Social Media, Power, Politics, and Social Media Posts. This webinar was organized by ICOM, COMS, International Committee for Communications, Marketing, and Audience Engagement, and ICOM-AVICOM, International Committee for Audiovisual New Technologies and Social Media. I'd like now to invite IVCOM and COMS chairs, Dr. Michael Fiber and Deborah Ziska, to share a few welcoming remarks.
Thank you so much, Lara. Yeah, dear colleagues, as president of the International ICOM Media Committee, AVICOM, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our webinar. It's not only the first event in a new webinar series jointly organized by AVICOM and the ICOM Committee COMS, it also marks the first ever collaboration between our two committees. And I'm as certain about its success as Rick Blaine was when he turned to Captain Louis Renault in the film Casablanca as they watched the plane disappearing into the distance and said, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Don't you agree, dear Deborah?
Yes.
So we will say, Deborah, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Museums are places of knowledge, memory, and inspiration. But they are more than that. Museums are also places of democracy, spaces for openness, for dialogue, and for shared reflection on our history, our present, and our future. They are places where discussion is not only allowed, but encouraged, critical, diverse, and free. This includes the freedom of research, of expression, and of interpretation. Freedoms that must never be restricted or influenced from outside. Museums must retain the autonomy to decide how they address topics, what perspectives they present, and how they reflect social development. This responsibility extends to the digital realm as well. Today, our communication no longer takes place solidly in exhibition halls. It also unfolds online, on websites, newsletters, and above all, on social media. Websites remain the solid foundation of a museum's digital identity, its digital home, so to speak. Social media, however, is the open window to the world, spontaneous, biological, and often emotional. Through platforms like Instagram, Facebook, X, or TikTok, museums can reach diverse audiences, offer behind-the-scenes insights, and create new forms of closeness and participation. But this openness also comes with challenges. Social media can be a space where emotions rise quickly, where messages can be distorted, and where political influence is sometimes exerted. A lot across the Atlantic illustrate this clearly. Under the Trump administration, many museums in the United States were pressured to alter their themes or language. The direct infringement on academic and cultural freedom. And yet, we have also seen courageous responses, museums using social media not merely as a platform for self-promotion, but as a tool of resistance. to draw attention to political interference, to mobilize solidarity, and to publicly defend the freedom of the word and education. These examples remind us that social media can be a space of democratic self-assertion, a place where cultural institutions take a stand and connect with one another when scientific and artistic freedoms are under threat. They inspire, and they show how vital it is to use social media thoughtfully, critically, and responsibly. That is precisely what today's discussion is about. Through this webinar series, we aim to explore together what opportunities social media offers for museums work, how to use it strategically, creatively, and yet authentically and respectfully, and how to design our digital communication effectively, accurately, and sustainably in line with our values, our educational mission, and our democratic responsibility. I am convinced that when museums use social media wisely, they can do much more than expand their reach. They can foster participation, dialogue, and democratic awareness. The insights and results of today's webinar will be presented and further discussed during our joint committee meeting on 5th of November at the ICOM General Conference in Dubai. You are all invited to participate. We will have a nice day there. Before we begin, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to everyone who has organized and prepared this event, to the coordination team led by Dr. Lara Corona and Dr. Christiana Kasaku, to our speakers and moderators, and to all those working behind the scenes to make today's session run smoothly. Your dedication and creativity make this exchange possible. I wish us all an inspiring, open, and constructive discussion with fresh insights, new perspectives, and perhaps one or two encouraging ideas for our own work. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Michael. And welcome also to the other chair of COMS, Dr. Debra Ziska.
Well, good afternoon from Washington, D.C. Yes, ICOM comms used to be marketing and public relations, and we've evolved into ICOM comms, which is communications, marketing, and audience engagement, which is what social media is all about. We are comprised of 1,200 museum professionals in marketing, communications, development, and community and audience engagement. And one of our top priorities is to engage our members in opportunities for professional growth, and that's what we're doing today. I want to thank all of the ICOM members on the committee on this joint collaboration for your participation and leadership in developing this series with AVICOM. And they are Sergio Rivera from Mexico, thank you, who you'll hear from later on today. Yevgenia Havlenko from Ukraine. Keith Riberiano, I see him from the Philippines. And of course, the co-chair along with Lara, Christiana Kazaku, who chaired our webinar series in artificial intelligence last year. I commend that to you on our YouTube channel. And Christiana not only did that, she also co-chaired this webinar, and she recently received her PhD, I understand. So congratulations, Christiana, on doing all those things all at once. So of course, we are very pleased. This is only one of the collaborations. So Michael and I like to collaborate because we're also collaborating. on a very exciting International Day on November 15th in Dubai. I hope if you're in Dubai, please join us at Terra Expo City. It's very exciting, one of the greenest, most sustainable and technologically interactive museums in the world in Dubai. And we have an exciting program for you that day, including the film festival, for which I was one of the many judges. So the other thing is, I just want to congratulate, thank you to all the speakers who volunteered their time and expertise to be with us today. We will be taping this. It'll be on our YouTube channel, on AVICOM's website. And I just want to echo some of the things that Michael said. And with no further ado, I just want to say in a time of when a lot of our freedoms are threatened, at a time when artificial intelligence is moving us faster than we could have ever imagined, of taking over a lot of what we consider our jobs to be in communications especially. We have a lot of challenges, and social media, we have to learn how do we use social media as a positive tool. And I think museums, it's especially important for museums to stay in the game and to be ahead of the game. And we've been behind a lot of times when it comes to social media and digital technology. We need to step up our game now. It is up to museums in this time of threats to our freedoms, especially freedom of speech and disinformation and misinformation. It's up to museums to play the role of telling the facts, to tell history accurately, science, truth-telling. It's up to us to keep the research out there, to be authentic, and tell the truth to our audiences. So I'll leave it to our experts to tell you more about that today. And just on behalf of the board, I think Nilufar is here. Nilufar Yazdikovsky from Iran. She did the wonderful promotion on social media. Thank you, Nilufar. But on behalf of all of our board, we congratulate all of you for today's webinar. And though I am stepping down as chair this year, I'm hoping that this collaboration will continue, Michael, between our committees. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I look forward to the webinar.
So thank you so much, Deborah. And thank you all of you for joining this webinar. So my name is Lara Corona. I'm a researcher in museum studies and director of the Rosas Museum in Italy. And I'm also an AVICOM member. So today I'll be moderating today's conversation together with my colleague, Sergio Manuel Rivera, who is a COMS member and the director of the public relations and marketing at the MIDE, the Interactive Museum of Economics in Mexico City. Hello, Sergio. Sergio?
Thank you, Lara. It's so good to be here. And I just want to say that Lara made a great, enormous job organizing this webinar. So I just wanted to thank you for all your effort and recognize your
Thank you. It was
power to join us.
It was a pleasure to collaborate with the entire work team. It was really a great job with Christiana, Marta, Nilofar, Eugenia, Joe, Keith, with all of you. So I'd like to remind you all that the webinar is recorded and made available at the YouTube channel of COMS and the website of AVICOM and our social media. For those who cannot join today, and if you need any caption during the webinar, you should be able to switch on the function by clicking on the Show Caption button. In order to actively participate, you can write your questions and comments in the Q&A section below. So let me start with this webinar with this quote. Peace does not mean an absence of conflicts. Differences will always be there. Peace means solving these differences through peaceful means, through dialogue, education, knowledge, and human ways. Dalai Lama. This quote promotes dialogue over division and fosters responsible communication in digital realm. In a moment when museums are themselves under assault, facing ideological scrutiny, censorship, and efforts to restrict their ability to tell full stories, our responsibility to engage, communicate, and reflect becomes all the more crucial. It reminds us that in an age when misinformation, hate speech, and polarization can erode trust and even threaten democracy itself, the way we communicate, including how museums engage online, truly matters. So, as said earlier, as we go through the session, feel free to share your thoughts and questions in the chat. Sergio and I, with Christiana's technical support, will be keeping an eye on your questions and comments, and we'll make sure to bring some of your reflection into the discussion later on. Thank you all for being here, and thank our speakers representing virtually all continents to help us reflect on how museums can navigate this evolving landscape, taking issues of ethics, activism, and identity in the digital works. So let's get started. And I will now hand it over to our first speaker. So with us today, we have Diego Vaz Bevilaqua from Brazil. Diego is the Deputy Director of Cultural Heritage and Science Communication at Casa de Osvaldo Cruz, Fiocruz, and currently serves as Chair of ICOM Brazil. He holds a PhD in Physics and postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard University. He's a professor in the Master's Program of Public Communication of Science, Technology, and Health of Fiocruz. He serves on the executive board of CIMUS at ICOM and is scientific editor of the journal Ciência Hoje. With the presentation Museums for Life, a Brazilian case of museums engagement campaign during COVID-19, it's my pleasure to welcome our first speaker, Diego Vaz Bevilaqua.
Okay, thank you very much, Lara. And I would like to first thank you all the organizers with special thanks to Lara Corona who made the invitation. And in the name of her to thank all the boards of ICON Cons and ICON Ivicon for having this webinar today. Let me time here so I won't lose my time. Okay, so I will take us a few years back, okay? I would like to present you a case study 4 years ago. There was a museum engagement campaign that ICOM Brazil launched during the pandemic's COVID-19 that I want to present to you today. I wasn't the chair of ICOM Brazil at that time. It was Renata Mota who was chairing it, but I was part of this campaign, and I think was a very landmark in terms of and the ability of a national committee to engagement network of local museums in terms of a single campaign. So I think it fits very well the theme of this webinar. That's why I select this case to present you. Let me share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay, great. So the title of my presentation is Museums for Life, Museus pela Vida. That was the original name in Portuguese, Brazilian case of museum engagement campaign during COVID-19. At first, I'd like to remind during the pandemics, we had ICOM report during 2020, museums professionals in COVID-19, which show us that at May 2020, 95% of all museums worldwide were closed to the public. And about 10% of museums had to reduce staff position because that was in 2021. Most of, especially museum educators, they don't have a space in the new landscape of closed museums, which public were absent. And especially in Brazil, we have a lot of staff that were like in a difficult position, and most museums have reduced their staff, including because of financial problems. So that was a situation that was worldwide applied to museums. So they had to find new ways to communicate to the public. They had to find new ways to fulfill their social role. and that was including Brazil, that was especially true. We did a survey at that time, which will try to survey the situation in Brazil of museum professional and the situation of how the public expect the museums to act. And of course, we had all the mental health issues with museum workers. They don't know how to engage with the public in the digital era. They didn't know how to manage their collections, how can they fulfill their roles. And on the same side, they were worried, of course, as everyone in the world, about the effects of the pandemics and the possibility of getting ill and having their people close to them passing away. So it was a very difficult time, very uncertainties, including the museum world. On the other hand, most audiences, when they think about the future of the museums, they think about inclusive museum, a digital museum, a gentle museum to look to the human side, to the aspects of the life. So how can you rethink the social role of museums? That's an institution that historically, traditionally, always work with people in their sites, present people like real people, and suddenly they have to deal with this digital world with most of the Brazilian museums with no previous training on how act in digital world, and most without specific communication personnel, and most of them even without any kind of social media at that time. So that was kind of the problem that was posed, and how can ICOM Brazil at that moment can act and as and organize this network of museums to create a sense of belonging and also sense of social role in that moment. At the same time, I need to remember that at that time, Brazil had a far-right government that was science negationist, was against vaccination, was against the protocol that was established by science in terms of preventing the spread of COVID, was also very against culture. It diminished all the budget for culture in general, including museums, and it was the biggest spread of fake news. So we have a very difficult situation in federal government. If it rings a bell about current government, it's okay. We can relate to that. But at that time, there was a very important problem in Brazil, which led us to a high exposure of our population to spreading of COVID because of the lack of social programs to keep people in home. We had very low testing rates because of public policy problems. We had to live with unfavorable housing conditions, have a lot of favelas, which people really live very close to each other without any possibility of social distance, and we have a limited access to primary care. So it lead to a very specific, a very high COVID spreading between vulnerable population. We have, for instance, 2 times higher fatality rate in neighborhoods with a high concentration of favelas, and you have a 2 times higher fatality rate among Black population in Brazil. So what was the campaign that was designed by ICOM Brazil? First of all, we want to create a network of museums. So we want to create safe space so we can exchange experiences, and then we want to help each other to fulfill the social role. And we decided to do it based on 3 aspects. So the first aspect was fostering solidarity. So museums should, that was what we defend at that time and still defend nowadays, should engage in solidarity, especially the vulnerable population at that time, to help to ease the problems that were created by lack of public policies for COVID-19. On the other hand, because we had a lot of fake news spreading, especially from the federal government, we decided that we should build a repository of reliable information within ICOM Brazil website. So the museums could have somewhere they can go with they rely on ICOM Brazil. So they can go on and consult not only scientific information, but also guidelines, manual on how they should act during COVID. And third aspect was the digital campaign. So they should relate to their audience, to their publics through their digital networks, the digital media. And we designed a campaign that we believe that would help museums to still engage to their public. So that was one of the posts. We present this campaign to we did a series of previous meetings and live events within museum professionals to engage them in the campaign. So the idea that spread, this is a Facebook post we did, is that the Museums for Life campaign aims to engage Brazilian museum in raising awareness among their audiences about the importance of vaccination, preventive measure against COVID-19, and the support for initiatives of solidarity with those suffering the consequences of the pandemic. The participation is very simple. It only requires commitment and creativity. So first of all, promoting solidarity. So one of the things a couple of museums in Brazil, they decided was to, because they had their facilities, they were closed to the public. So we had a couple of museums, they decided to open their spaces as vaccination centers. We had a lot of, we had to vaccinate, our population are very big. We had to vaccinate them fast, and we had huge lines in the vaccination centers to vaccinate people. So we start to see museums that were closed to open their premises as vaccination centers. One of the first to do it was the Museum of the Republic, which is a historical house called the museum, which were closed, and they was one of the first who open and start to vaccinate people. And the same happens with the Museum of Football in São Paulo, also the Museum of Tomorrow. So a lot of important people, TV personalities went to those places, take pictures, and that helped to promote a lot the vaccination, because of the campaign of the far right wing at that moment against vaccination made a lot of people reluctant to vaccinate. So we need to support it, and that was a very nice way to support it. The other kind of solidarity action was museums that that have their spaces close to population that were especially vulnerable. Here I brought two examples: the Museum of Portuguese Language in São Paulo, who is in a neighborhood with a lot of homeless population. They design solidarity campaign, a donation campaign to help to fund food to distribute among the homeless population that live close to the museum. Museum of Life from Fiocruz, my institution, used to do anniversary events. So we also design a campaign for a lot of live events so people could get into lives and donate money for the association we select from the territory or community of neighborhoods, which are mostly favelas, that were helping people to deal with COVID situation. On the other hand, on the website, we compile a series of links and manuals and guidelines from trustworthy institutions like Fiocruz itself, Instituto Butantan, and we had lucky that both institutions that are not only the major public health institution in Brazil, but they also have memory and cultural heritage division, museums. So through their museums, we get in contact with the institutions and collect a lot of information, reliable information that museums could rely on, go there and to not only to have that as a reference, but also to spread through their public. And last but not least, we had the digital campaign. So what was our idea? We developed a manual and a series of webinars teaching people how to do it. We create some specific layouts so they can use it and share with their social network if they doesn't have any communication person. And we give a series of hints. So first of all, we ask the museums to consult our reliable repository information. We stimulate them to talk about the importance of the preventive measure for COVID. And we also stimulate them to use like memes, humor in their social media, remembering that the situation was a very sad situation. So that was a way to also, of course, not exaggerating, but to ease a little bit the pain of that moment. And first, but most important, we really stimulate the museums to use their collections to talk about what we're suffering right at that moment. So a lot of museums, about hundreds of museums, they answered this calling from ICOM Brazil, and they start to do a lot of social media posts, which they were like sending messages about the prevention using their collection. For instance, you have an Afro Museum from Bahia who took images of masks from their collections with the message use the face mask. Also some memory spaces, Afro memory spaces, as the Memorial Menininha do Cantuário na Bahia, also develop a series of campaign using our layout. They didn't have any communication person. They just replied our campaign and sending messages to their public, which are very specific public of Afro descendants. We had the Emilio Ribas Museum. We use old poster advertisement of fascination and promote this on their websites. Had art museums. We look for like contemporary art and promote them in their social media, like fascination against boredom. The other one, like with the face mask on the door, something very usual, something very usual for the moment. So they use those contemporary art to promote the message we were stimulating. We have the situation of Ricardo Brenan, for instance, who took part of their collections with a subtle humor style and promote also the ideas to hygienize the hands, use face masks, stay at home, keep social distance, and avoid crowding. Also, a lot of historical museums, they look for like vaccination instruments on their collections, very 100 years old vaccination certificates. And ethnographical museum, who works a lot of indigenous community, they took part of the collections and applied some graphical style design to keep like this campaign talk about like, okay, after vaccination, you should keep the protocol of safety, and yes, social distance works. So this is a couple of examples of what museums have done. Just to give a few numbers about the reach of this campaign. So it starts on May 10th of 2021. We didn't have a specific time ended, but I mean we collected to July 1st. It was 768 Instagram posts with the hashtag Museums for Life. So based on some tools that you used, our estimate reach was almost 2 million account reached with about 55,000 interactions. That's important to mention that we didn't have and still don't have a single museum with that far reach in Brazil. And that was only possible because we actually assimilate a big network of museums who, as a network, they talk to their different publics and they help to spread in a decentralized way this message. This is just to show that it during the time how much it spreaded. Well, just to conclude, because I'm already out of my time, just to say we don't know how much this campaign they actually changed population views about vaccination and protocols for COVID. But one thing to have about a series of history that a lot of museums they keep talking up to date is that it certainly helped most of those museums who adhere to the campaign to keep a sense of of connection, of engagement with their publics, even during COVID, even during digital times. So thank you very much. Sorry, I use more time than I should.
Thank you so much, Diego. Thank you for this remarkable campaign, for sharing with us, and thank you for your expertise. Thank you, thank you. So continuing our program, we are honored to introduce our second speaker, Ech-cherki Dahmali from Morocco. Ech has been the director of Telecommunication Museum of Morocco in Rabat for more than 2 decades, with a PhD in contemporary history, a master degree in archaeology, and a bachelor's degree in museology. Ech also serves as the president of ICOM Arab, vice chair of ICOM Africa, vice president of ICOM Morocco, and accredited trainer of ICOM ICTOP. Through his work with Alexo and UNESCO and his visiting professor role in Morocco and the United Arab Emirates, Dr. Dahmali helps advance a vision of museums that are ethical, inclusive, and deeply connected to their social context, both in the Arab world and internationally. With the presentation, Museums in Social Media Between Activism and Ethical Use, a warm welcome to Ech-cherki Dahmali.
Thank you, Lara. Thank you for our colleague from COMS and from NPR for your kind invitation. I'm very pleased to be here with you. And thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Deborah. And my presentation will be quite brief, but I would like to talk about a critical problem about the use of social media relating to museum activities. If first of all, why we are using more and more your social media, especially in cultural spaces like museums, because our museums must change, because the traditional museum is disappearing. The museum which work which related only on acquisition, documentation, the exhibition, it's now developing, because more and more companies, private companies, can do this work for us as a museum professional. So the traditional museum is disappearing, and why? Because the museum who give information, it will end, because information we can find them everywhere. So the museum and the museum of insulating and teaching the population will end in a near future. And also, we should, as a museum professional, keep in mind that we are in front of 2 generations, the digital natives and the digital immigrants. As maybe we are all a digital immigrant, but we should be aware that the digital natives are more and more influencing, and you can find that some children can have a big impact on the budget of their family, where to go. They can impose to their parent to go to a museum, but they can impose to their parent to go somewhere else. So digital natives are more and more important as a guest in our museums. So as a museum professionals, we must make a smoothly intrusion in digital natives' words. Otherwise, the next generation or our visitors, we will miss them, because they will choose another institutions. So, as I told you, the traditional way of managing our museum now must be changed, so as to offer switchable content for digital natives, which are the population of tomorrow. And as I told you, even in traditional and what we call the encyclopedical museums, the information, it's not important nowadays, because we can find this information everywhere. So the museum of tomorrow is the museum who provoke visitors. Now we are looking for the provocation instead of exhibiting items. And I agree with our colleague Frédéric Pani, who is the curator of the Famille Isère de Pizet Museum in France. He told that I am for the wicked museum that confuses you, that puts you in out of the ordinary situation. I totally agree with him because nowadays people or visitors, they come to our museum with many ideas. So we should provoke their imagination to think about our collection. Otherwise, they can't just see the collection and get out. And also in the future, we will have more and more other kind of museums which will attract a lot of people because they are using marketing well. As you can see here, we have two kind of museum of illusions, museum of feelings. No, there is no exhibition and no items. It just but these museums, they have a lot of visitors, and they make a lot of money from this kind of ideas. As I told you, also there is people, they want something which is different because when they visit museum differently, they use the content to post it in social media. Here we have an example of people who want to spend the night inside the museum, take picture and post it on social media. So the other section of my presentation, it's about the social media and the cultural activism in museum. I'm sure, and you agree with me, that social media play a crucial role in the contemporary activism, especially in the heritage activism. It facilitates rapid communication and can mobilize a lot of people in a short time. I can give you some example. Here we have an example of Massachusetts Museum. He was obliged to sell a part of his collection, but through a social media campaign, there is many people who respond to this call, and they make a demonstration in front of the museum with "Save Our Art." So they use social media to gather people easily. Here we have another example of an activism from Congo. He entered to the Museum of Louvre, to the primitive art section, and he started to take some items because he wants to take them back to Congo. I'm sure that he is not stupid. He know that he will be arrested by the security. But what he wants this. He wants to make as a social media video and to talk about restitution of items. So social media, yes, in this way it can be good, but in as a museum profession, as I can, we will tell you after that, we are facing a many challenges with this kind of intrusion, if I can say. And also some people can easily post in one picture like that can be like the 1 million times or more than 1 million times. Who was this? How was this acquired? It means these collections were stolen from the initial population in the past. Here we are in the Egyptian section, and also I will give you a clear example about social media community can force you to change your exhibition. How? I will give you the example of the Black Lives Matter events that it has been in 2020. You know this. Let's take this example. We have here a public square in UK. We have a statue of the 17th century personality. So people, this personality, he was a slave merchant. So people, they took this statue and they draw it in the river, and they put instead of this statue, the statue of an activism, which called the genre. So, and the statute of the 17th century, it was taken and placed in the museum, but not in a initial position. It's like that. It means that if you consider this public square as a museum or an open air museum, it means that the social media community forces the curator of this public exhibition to change the exhibition. So if we don't listen to this kind of social media community, I think we can have more and more problem. The same thing happens in the Arab world. That's why I want to add this example. It's the example of the Ferdinand de Lesseps. Ferdinand de Lesseps is the director of the Canal Suez project, who was made it. It's like a Panama Channel. After the after the end of the Kingdom of Egypt, the people they fall it down, and instead of the statue, they put the flag of Egypt. Now this statue is exhibited in Canal Suez Museum, fortunately. So the last part of my presentation, and what about ethics? So as a museum professional, we are all imposing for our staff an official or an unofficial use of the social media. Please be aware. We can even oblige some our employees to sign for an agreement about the use of social media. But what about users? So I give you some example for our staff. For example, we told them don't post when posting anything on behalf of the museum. Please do that, and that. Especially we insist on not posting images that show in corridors, windows, or door numbers, or plans, museum plan, or something like that. But as I told you, what about users? What as a museum professional, what we can do for them? Should let them post photo of museum stuff? Should let them using picture of items for commercial purpose? How we can stop them to tell wrong information about the staff or about the museum? How we can don't let them block museum entrance. For example, here we have the example of the National Gallery in London. They put some tomato sauce on art, and they are talking because they want to tell that who is important, museum collections or food for population. So in this kind of activities, I'm sure that in the future we will face them more and more. The last event, I'm sure that you are all aware about this event of the jewelry stolen from the Louvre Museum. I'm sure that the thieves, they have already seen all the videos posted on the social media in this Apollo gallery. And here at the bottom, you can see some picture of this room. They can see the kind of cameras, they can see the doors, and they can see even from where to go and everything. So social media, we can. So what's the solution? Can we bring them to justice? But it's sufficient. Bringing social media user to justice, it's sufficient. I'm not sure that it is sufficient, because what we can do after a post, it was like hundreds and thousands of times shared, million of times, or viewed by million of users. So I think my final thought and my final slide, we should think about a social and more social implication of our museum. So the museum is evolving, and we should follow this, and we should understand that the museum role is changing, and we should change also with this, and we should go especially for more and more social implication with our visitors. We should listen to them. We should implicate the local community, because I see many examples that some national museums or other museums, they do some exhibitions, and during the preparation of these exhibitions, they don't invite anyone from the local community to see the exhibition before the opening ceremony, or to give an idea or something. So when you are doing something without implicating the society or at least the local community, they cannot help you when we have a fire in the museum or there is you have a catastrophe, an earthquake or something. So we should more and more be more implicated with our society. Otherwise, we cannot face this kind of provocation. Thank you for listening, and sorry if I was over on my time. Thank you.
Oh, I've appreciated so much your presentation was so engaging and enlightening. Thank you so much. So please remember that if you wanted to share any comments and post questions, you can post them in the Q&A section, and then we will get back to them after all the presentations. So let me now introduce the third speaker, Mayki Gorosito from Argentina. Mayki is the past immediate director of the ESMA, Memory Site Museum, former clandestine center for detention, torture, and extermination in Argentina. In the past, Mayki was in charge of the international process that got the museum added to both the UNESCO World Heritage List and the Mercosur Cultural Heritage List. Mayki, a professor in educational science and international cooperation, has an extensive background in regional integration and human rights advocacy. He has worked with public institutions in Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, directed the Mercosur's Executive Secretariat, and formed INCITIR, a civil society organization dedicated to fostering collaboration and sustainable development in Latin America. Her work and interactions with the audience show how important memory museums are for protecting truth, justice, and democracy, even in places where politics are extremely difficult. With the presentation, Public Policies of Memory, Truth, and Justice, the role of a World Heritage Site Memory Museum in adverse contexts, a warm welcome to Mayki Gorosito.
Thank you, Lara. Good morning and good evening to everyone. I'm very honored and grateful to participate in this seminar. Thank you very much for the invitation, and especially to Lara. First of all, I must say that I'm deeply convinced that sites of memory are institutions that are essential for democracy and for the construction of peace. The current challenges regarding communication, visibility, sustainability, and the strengthening of the site of memory in Argentina are multiplied and immense, as we are going through a stage of setbacks in the field of public memory policies. ESMA Site Museum is under attack. What is most important to say when we speak about the Museo Sitio de Memoria ESMA, ex Centro Clandestino de Detención, Tortura y Exterminio, is that the Museo Sitio de Memoria ESMA was one of more than 800 illegal detention centers that operated during the last civil military dictatorship that devastated our country, Argentina, between 1976 and 1983. Around 5,000 men and women were held there, most of whom were murdered and thrown alive into the sea. More than 45 pregnant women were detained, disappeared at ESMA. At least 20 babies were born there, 13 of whom were illegally appropriated and later had their identities restored thanks to the struggle of their families and the grandmother of Plaza de Mayo, las madres y abuelas de Plaza de Mayo, out of a total of 140 grandchildren whose identities have been recovered under these circumstances. The crimes, just to put it in a context about the former Center of Detention, Torture, and Extermination, the crimes against humanity committed at the ESMA Clandestine Center include kidnapping, torture, concealment of detention from the victims' families and loved ones, sexual abuse and rape, inhuman and degrading treatment, forced labor, appropriation of children born in captivity, theft of property, murder, concealment of the body of those who were killed. On the other hand, as a symbol of the achievements and recognition of the outstanding universal value expressed by the institution that I had the honor to lead, on September 2023 in Riyadh, Arabia Saudita, Saudi Arabia, the museum achieved global significance with its inclusion on the UNESCO World Heritage List. On that occasion, UNESCO member states recognized us for being highly representative and closely and tangibly associated with the illegal repression of opponents and dissidents, both armed and unarmed, carried out and coordinated by the Latin American dictatorships in the 70s and the 80s, based on the enforced disappearance of persons, in a context of global geopolitical tensions between opposing visions of world socio-political order. These recognitions add to the museum site's previous designated as judicial evidence, national historic monument, and cultural heritage of Mercosur, and came after an extensive and complex nomination process. This process involved, among other actions, drafting a nomination dossier with an interdisciplinary team of professionals from various fields of knowledge. Our institutions, and I say our, despite having been removed from my position as executive director 4 months ago, because the museum site belongs to all the Argentines and for all the citizens of the world. The museum is a highly significant example of multiple forms of consensus since 2012, when it began to take shape, through its inauguration and 10 years of trajectory. From the beginning, the museum site curatorial script was based on the voices of survivors and their testimony present in court trials. Last May, the museum site celebrated its 10th anniversary, and it is impossible to think all the trajectory without considering the various achievements in the field of human rights that we have reached as a society. Last year, Argentina celebrated 40 years of uninterrupted democracy, a process that also involves solidarity, resistance, and struggle, through which our society embraced the ethics of the never again, the nunca más. This year marks 40 years since the trial of the juntas, which in 1985 convicted 5 of the 9 members of the military juntas for carrying out a systematic plan of extermination under the civic military dictatorship. Next year will mark 50 years since the civil military coup. At one point, thanks to demands for this and the struggle of human rights organizations, the existence of a political will and the collective construction developed over many years, there was a comprehensive and articulated framework of public policies on memory. We were many institutions that worked together for the memory, trust, and justice. It's not the time that we are living in Argentina. And in the other hand, in the field of justice, Argentina has issued 328 conviction rulings, with 1,202 perpetrators convicted of crimes against humanity. During the past year and a half of my administration, we have navigated this complex context with more dedication, perseverance, compassion, conviction, professionalism, well-grounded arguments, high standards, and love. And I think it is essential to continue creating and sustaining spaces like this one, this seminar, to reflect on why it's important to safeguard a museum site of memory, all the museums and sites of memory, and why it must remain part of a public policy as an indispensable tool for democracy. Since December 2023, we had witness of a process of dismantling and invisibilizing these institutions, as well as attack on human rights policies, institutions, and defenders. The museum side is an state institution and not a party institution, not a government institution, and we should work from the place that we are in this moment for sustain these places. We must always act with creativity, strategy, love, dialogue, and coordination. I think that, well, I am watching my time, and let me see. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mayki.
I also want to add another thing, that when we are talking about site of memory, we must refer and project dimensions connected to public policies, archives, research, political will, consensus and participations, the pedagogy of memory, the conservation, the value of survivors' testimonies, the human rights organizations, the justice, the tourism and memory, the work with journalists and with teachers, because a memory built upon justice and not upon vengeance is an invaluable foundation for shaping a path of consensus, democracy, and social peace. I think sites of memory must continue safeguarding memory, transmitting through and accompanying justice. And thank you, and as we say here, never again, nunca más.
Thank you so much, Mayki. Thank you for pointing out. Thank you for your presentation. We really enjoyed it. It gave us a lot to think about it. So following this wonderful talk, let me introduce our fourth speaker, Daniel Pett from the UK, with his expertise as the Director of Digital Strategy and Operation at the Westminster School in the UK. Daniel has worked in many different fields, including banking, IT, telecoms, and museums. Daniel worked for Historic England as head of major projects and digital strategy before joining Westminster. There, he was in charge of a digital transformation program worth almost £80 million. His work looks into how digital technologies can be used in museums in a way that is both ethical and sustainable. It forces museums to think about how their actions affect the environment and their responsibility towards online communities. With the presentation, Museological Ethics and the Digital, What Are We Doing to the Planet and Our Crowd? A warm welcome to Daniel Pett.
Thank you, Lara. Thank you everyone for inviting me to come and speak on this as well. I'm actually leaving the school quite soon, so I'll be hopefully going back to work in the museum. I'm going to try and share my presentation now. It's going to be online. Anyone can have a look at it afterwards. I speak very fast as well, so if there's anything that you need me to repeat, please put it in the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat and we can put it up there. It's going to be quite hard to follow that last talk. That was very sad for me to listen to that one. And the talks before covered some of the ground that I will cover now as well. So let's see whether this will work. So I think all of you can see that at the moment. So I'm going to talk about ethics in the digital and about what crowdsourcing does and social media. I think you all know that social media has changed drastically in the last few years. It used to be very vibrant and really useful when Twitter was actually around, not X as it's called now, Twitter, when it was useful to the museum world. So this talk's going to cover ethics, soft power, digital soft power, that is in this case, social media, some digital interventions, my personal viewpoint about how things are going, and what digital promise might be out there as well. And this is my daughter in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin using digital. I think that face says it all. She's completely confused about what that device is meant to do for her. And I think most people are struggling with what digital does for museums. And I can talk a little bit about that. So what's ethical about digital at the moment? Well, there's quite a few things that we need to cover for ethics in digital world. The most important one at the moment is really about privacy and protection of people and spaces, and about being fair and care based around principles. I'm not going to go into those because they exist and you can look them up. It's about copyright and intellectual property rights as well. Museums own this information, but people are using it in ethical ways sometimes, and other times unethical as well. So we can talk about that again in a minute. There's representation and bias and responsibility. Are we actually biased as museums? Are we telling people that we want to hear and what we want the other people to hear, which actually isn't correct at times as well? Are we a bastion of truth, or are we doing things that we think are right? And we've just talked again about the digital divide and prevention of digital poverty as well. Not every museum has got the same resources. They can't all do the same thing. We talk about museums as a general term about digital space, but not everyone can do this. The small museum in my village perhaps can't do the same thing that a national museum could do somewhere else. And it's also about community engagement, contested objects and civic responsibilities. But most importantly at the moment is perhaps climate impact and what we're doing. So if we were talking about AI, and you mentioned that you've had seminars around AI already, the impact of AI in the environment is huge, but it's also huge in what people are consuming as well. We're going to come back to that with the bit about the Louvre that Dr. Dahmali talked about earlier, and I'm going to show a few things as well. And the responses using AI around that has been quite interesting. So what can you use for soft digital power as mechanisms? There's quite a lot of things out there. I'm not going to read through all of this stuff. You can read it in my slides afterwards if you'd like to. But there's different mechanisms for soft digital power. There's open access and rights. This is quite a strong one. Now, lots of museums, I worked for the British Museum for 15 years, exert quite strong rights over their objects and their data and stop people using them in creative ways that they'd like to. Other museums like to go open and give you free access to all the information, like the Rijksmuseum and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I actually left the British Museum because I tried to do too much open stuff and it didn't go down very well with the management. So that's one of the reasons why I left. I was too open with what I was doing and released stuff openly to the world. People are publishing on global platforms as well to try and put their information out there. So some of you might know about Europeana. Not that many people actually use Europeana in anger, but it's a really good platform. There's Wikimedia Commons. There's shared infrastructure and software that's being built as well. So like Arches that comes from the Getty, which allows you to have an online database of your objects on a map. And there's things like IIIF, which allows you to do deep zooming images as well. Now, using these shows that you're part of an ecosphere and that you're being part of that influencing sphere, that you can start telling people you're doing good stuff. If you're using the same thing, it makes it easier to do similar things. Digital diplomacy as well. What are you trying to achieve? Now, let's not pretend that museums are not political. Most museums have got a funder, and that funder is asking them to do certain things. So in the UK, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport is influenced by the government. They fund the national museums. They give them a message about the things they would like them to participate in and how they want to be shown. Local museums are funded by the Arts Council. They're also funded by the government. They will have a message they'd like to put out as well. They're not all individual. It's about what comes out of there. And you can do virtual different things as well, like virtual museums online. You can take things back to where they came from and pretend that it's all real and allow people to participate in it. So I could be based in London, but I could participate in something that was from China. I could be in a 3D representation of what it looked like. So you can have soft cultural diplomacy coming across different parts of the world. And then there's things like immersion and participation. Now, participation is really important for museums. If you can't participate in what's going on there, what are you doing? You're just walking into that museum, you're looking. You're just looking at objects and going, that's nice, but there's nothing to participate in. You want to have a dialogue with what's going on there. You want to go with people who have got a like mind to you and talk about stuff. And that's where social media can come in as well. You can have a conversation around the world with other people around your objects. And there's opportunities for putting your stuff out there in different spheres as well. So there's things like Assassin's Creed, the video game. I've got a picture of Karnak on the bottom right-hand corner. Things can go out in that, and 40 million people will play that game around the world, and they see cultural objects. Is it ethical to put them into that game? Some of them being destroyed, some of them being used out of aspect. But the representations are fantastic. On the left-hand side of the screen, I've got a 3D representation of Rosetta Stone. I 3D modeled that for the museum in about 2 hours when I worked at the British Museum. Should that be in the museum is one of the questions, or should we have a virtual copy? This is one of the things that you can think about with social media and people can ask about, but you can share that object back to the land that it came from. So it's all quite difficult things that we're starting to think about. So what's the National Museum trying to achieve with soft power? It's trying to globally influence. So the National Museum for me, I'm thinking about the British Museum or the Tate or Natural History Museum in the UK. Or in America, I'm thinking about Smithsonian and how they're funded and how Donald Trump's now interfering in what they're doing and telling them they should be working in a different way. Politicians don't want to fund museums, but they want to use them for their agenda. That's something we always have to remember about. That the politicians want museums to look like a representation of the national psyche or what they're up to. National branding identity is one of the things they've got there. They're using persuasion to show the world that they're a good organisation. I hope I'm not going too fast. If I am, please say. A local museum has got a slightly different way of thinking about stuff. So I'm a trustee of a local museum. It's very, very small. It's funded for about £300,000 a year. That's not a huge amount of money, but it's a reasonable amount of money to get stuff done. But what are they trying to achieve? They're trying to get community cohesion and belonging for people who come to that museum. It's social history. It's about going there and seeing things that your grandparents used to do, or your great-grandparents, even further back, and seeing stories. It's about placemaking and economic development as well, and how you persuade people that that thing is important to community. So we just had a talk that centered very much around social community in the past as well, and about why people should be part of that cultural sphere. And this is what we should be talking about with social media, is what stories we've got to tell, why people want to use our objects, and can they use those objects to tell their own story? Because some of these objects belong to their families from the past. Now, one of the things I've got a problem with about the National Museum in the UK is that they charge for access to images. And people from Egypt, for instance, are asked to pay for access to images of their own objects. Is that ethically right? That's one of the things you have to think about. Should we be giving things away for free to people who come from those source communities? So this slide just shows you a different part about what a local museum might be thinking about soft power compared to a national museum. So the scale of power is global international for a national museum, and it's very local and civic for a small museum. The audience is very different. It's about engagement and projection for core digital goals. But also, is the digital output actually any good? Now, for some national museums, it's very underwhelming. It's a massive objects with no real participation. It's how they want to tell their story, but you aren't seeing anything really creative that comes out of it. And what's the soft power outcome? Now, for a big museum, it can be about building trust in the British brand. So I'm talking about Britain and the UK for my talk. I'm not talking about everyone else. I'm talking about what we're trying to achieve in the UK. It's about UK PLC type thing is one of the things they come out with as a phrase for us. For the local museum, it's about social cohesion and making people want to come to that museum. Now, I've written quite extensively around this. It's around the R factors of digital. There's 6 things that I think digital is trying to do at the moment. There's reach, revenue. I think that one's a bit of a fallacy. People think they can make money off the internet for cultural stuff. I don't think they really can. It's about relevance, and that's where things like the Louvre coming in at the moment is relevant to people because people are talking about it. There's a reaction. Are you making people react to what you're doing? And are they coming back? There's retention. And then there's relationships as well. Is your social media or your digital media allowing you to build a relationship with its constituents or people who want to come to that museum? So I'm going to give you an example of reach. So this is the British Museum. It's a nice big building. It's a bit austere. Does it allow you to tell interesting things? This is my local museum that I'm a trustee for. It's a small museum. It's a completely different aspect, but it's got similar things at its heart. It's got objects, it's got people, it's got music, it's got history. It's trying to tell a story. That's the thing I'm talking about. It's a story for all of this narrative. If you think about Nina Simon's work at Participatory Museum, that's all about getting involved in museums and doing interesting things. That's what this small museum is trying to do, make people take part. It's not just about going to look at things. Revenue. Now, this is an interesting one. So the British Museum has just launched its BM Pink Ball. It's all about making money for the museum. Who are these social media outputs really for? They're to show the funding organisations they're doing a good job on the left-hand side. So the museum director is showing that he's organised something with a very big funder. It's satisfying their need. In the middle, I've got a picture of an object they're trying to acquire at the moment. This has been found. It's up for sale for a huge amount of money, but they need to raise the money to buy it for the museum. Again, it's trying to influence people to give money to the museum. On the right-hand side, our local museum, the one I'm a trustee for, had a visit from a local MP and the Minister for Culture. Oh, not Minister for Culture, Minister for Museums. Now, if you look at the difference in consumption of these, the one on the right-hand side from our local MP, 3 people have liked that picture. 3 people. That's minuscule, isn't it, when you think about consumption? In the middle, we've got a picture, Instagram video of this amazing object. 84,000 people have liked it. 1,900 people have commented on it. That's okay, but we're going to come to some social media influencers in a minute. They're doing masses more than this. On the left-hand side, the funding one, 4,900. Well, British Museum gets 6 million visitors a year. It's got 2 million people who follow them online. This is a really small return on investment for that output. So do people actually want to see this stuff? Is it actually hitting the audience you want? It is for what they're trying to do for that point. It's reached the right people because they congratulated themselves. So relevance, what sort of things are museums putting out there as well? It's what they think the public want to achieve and consume as well. So I'm giving you 3 examples here. They're all 3 museums that I've been involved with. On the left-hand side is British Museum. It's about telling stories about them in the way they want to be seen. The Bucks Museum that I'm involved with, their social media at the moment is about trying to sell the exhibitions that they're putting on and make people want to come to their exhibitions. The Fitzwilliam Museum, who I used to work for, I'm not really sure what they're trying to achieve with their social media. They're showing pictures of objects most of the time. There's not much narrative around them. It's here's a nice object, you can come and see it. But it's not inviting a dialogue around the objects in many ways. It's just showing that they've got something interesting. And what sort of reaction have you got? So I'm going to give the Louvre example. So Dr. Dahmali sort of stole some of the things I was going to talk about, but that's fine because what I'm going to talk about is what the public have actually done around it since. So this is some of the pictures that came out of the New York Times the other day. And these are the reactions you're getting on social media at the moment. They're quite tongue-in-cheek, or how can we put it? Well, they're poking fun at museums in many ways. But it's a massive publicity stunt for them as well. That museum is now being talked about all over the world. People will come to that museum. So you've got people talking about outfits they might wear to go and rob the museum. You've got an AI video of what the break-in looked like. That's the one in the middle. And then you've got IKEA talking about having things that will protect crown jewels, but not really. And you've got people making cartoon jokes about it as well. And then you've got an AI video of a cat burglar at the Louvre as well. And you've got really, that's 1 million people have liked that one. If we go back to the BM one earlier, 4,000, 1 million people have liked this. That's still not a huge amount of people in the grand scheme of things, but it's quite good. And then you've got a company called, well, not company, an art collector called Looty Art saying what things they would take from the Louvre, which goes back to that one from the Orley Museum earlier about the man who went in and stole stuff. These are things that they think should go back because they've got rights to them in their mind because that's where their cultural things come from. So this is a really good response because people are talking about museums and wanting to be interested in them. It's a reaction. And that's where one of my 6 R's comes in. It's a reaction. Now, people are reacting in a way that they want to participate with a museum. So I've covered what I was going to talk about. And I think this is where social media is sort of going now for museums. It's the ethical stance about what people are doing and why we should be doing it. And actually, is the most ethical advocate for you as a museum the public who go to your museum and use stuff and do creative things? You give them a seed and allow them to recreate things that they would like to do. And they talk about museums in a way that actually gets out there to a greater community. So some of the things you're seeing now are museums using influencers. It doesn't always go down very well, but it's getting it out to a different audience. Museums have got lots of great characters within them as well, people who can tell stories. And sometimes they need the confidence and the chance to actually be there and actually say those things. And I think that's what's going to change over time. Now, whether social media stays around in the way that we've got now is a different matter. I think X is probably dead for us. Instagram is growing quite steadily. Should we be on TikTok on the ethical stance as well, because of the invasive nature of its advertising cookies and things like that? YouTube does quite a good job, but video seems to be a thing that's making quite a lot of impact at the moment. But we can't all afford to do this. That's the thing. We've got this broad term for museums saying we should all be doing this thing. We can't all do this. And sometimes it's worth clubbing together as a group of museums and saying we will broadcast together. And one of the things Neil McGregor talked about was the museum as a broadcaster back in about 2009, 2010, about the museum broadcasting its information out to a large audience. And that's really what we are doing. We are broadcasting. We're not having a conversation most of the time. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'll put my link to my talk in the chat so that you can see it if you want to, because I've had lots of text on there. And if you've got questions afterwards, please do send me a message and I'll very happily talk about it as well. So I hope that was useful and I didn't speak too fast.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I have to say I enjoyed a lot, the cat with the mask, the robbery in the Louvre, and obviously it's so cute. Your daughter is so cute.
I'll tell her.
So thank you so much for your valuable insights you share with us. So our last but not least speaker is Saskia Randle from New York. Saskia is the Senior Design and Curatorial Associate at the Climate Museum in New York, which is the first museum in the US that is entirely focused on climate issues. The museum employs art and culture to get people thinking, learning, and working together on the climate crisis. With a BA in urban studies with a specialization in architecture and minors in environmental science and art history, Saskia is in charge of the Climate Museum's graphic design and digital presence, and she also supports research and provides conceptualization for exhibitions. Her work looks at how creative communication and visual storytelling may give communities the capacity to help with climate change. Before joining the museum, she contributed to Gallery magazine and directed Columbia Ballet Collaborative at Columbia University. With the presentation Art, Learning, and Empowerment for Climate Progress, a warm welcome to Saskia Randle.
Thank you very much, Lara, for the introduction, and to ICOM Comms and ICOM Avicom for hosting this webinar. Let's see, I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So my name is Saskia. I've been on the Climate Museum team for over 7 years now, and part of my role, among other things, has always been overseeing our social media, which I will tell you about today. But before we dive in, just to give some overall context, I think it's important for me to give you an introduction to the Climate Museum. So we are the first museum in the United States dedicated to climate change, and we use arts and cultural programming to invite the public into climate engagement with a real emphasis on accessibility and inclusiveness. So we see ourselves as an explicitly activist cultural institution. Our goal is to help people see their own agency on climate. We began public programming in 2017. So you see here our very first exhibition. And since then, we've presented 17 exhibitions, held over 355 events, including panels and workshops, performances, and we've welcomed over 166,000 visitors. We are currently embarking on our next phase of development, which is fundraising for a permanent home, which will open in 2030. So because our exhibitions have to date been short-term and pop-up, social media is a really important way that we stay in touch with our audience and continue to mobilize them on climate while we don't have a permanent space open to the public. And now a quick note on our audience. So our target audience is people who are worried about climate change, but who are not sure how to take action. And this is based on research on the US population. I know this is an international group, but research on the US population by communications experts at George Mason and Yale universities, who have identified that 11% of adults in the US, which is tens of millions of Americans, fall into three categories. First, they are concerned about climate change. Second, they are not currently taking action on climate. And third, they are willing to take action, but they don't know what to do. And so that 11% is at the very center of our audience, which then opens up to include the whole supermajority of adults in the US. It's close to 70%. Who support bold climate policy and climate justice policies, but most of us are quiet about it. And because we don't speak up on climate, we actually perceive ourselves to be in a minority. So we think that it's just a minority of us caring about climate, and that causes us to be quiet on it. And this effect is so strong in the United States that researchers have termed it a false social reality. So the Climate Museum's work, and that includes our social media presence, aims to empower people to speak up and make the supermajority known. So how do we do it? The museum's methodology, both in our exhibitions and in our social media, combines art with learning and action. So in this photo, you see those three components in one of our recent exhibitions. We use art as a pathway because it opens us up emotionally. It elevates our sense of possibility, capability, community, and our sense of what we can accomplish together. We have worked with a range of artists who've created very different work, but time and time again, we have seen it open up our visitors. Art, including the mural that you see here, helps us imagine better futures, and it helps us see the future that we are fighting for. The second component of our work is learning. Art helps us or opens us up to learning and to receiving new information and empowering people with the truth. So in our exhibitions, we share both hard truths about the setbacks and where we are today, and also inspiring stories about progress that is being made. We try to make these learning experiences as sensory and interactive as possible. And finally, the third part is action. So art builds a sense of community and lifts up our feelings of our own capacities, which sets the stage for people to recognize their ability to take meaningful action on climate. Specifically, we encourage civic, public-facing, expressive actions instead of more consumer, individual-oriented actions. And we use a sticker wall, which you see here, to help our visitors see that their actions are being taken in community with others, helping us feel less outscaled in the face of a crisis that can feel very overwhelming. So each sticker here represents one action that a visitor has committed to. And over the course of our shows, these stickers aggregate, and there are layers upon layers showing the waves of collective action being taken and helping us see that supermajority that I mentioned at the beginning. So we've seen this combination of art, learning, and action being tremendously empowering for people. And we've heard visitors say things like, I walked in today feeling pretty doomed about climate, and I leave feeling really hopeful. And so on our social media, we've adopted a similar approach that I'll just run through now. And for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to focus on Instagram, which is where we put most of our effort when it comes to social media. So the first series that I wanted to show you is called Pathways to Climate. And it's a series that features creators across a range of media to highlight the diversity and scope of artistic responses to climate change. It's been really inspiring to see how climate arts has blossomed over the last 7 years that I've been working on this series. From painting to sculpture, performance, we've featured hundreds of artists with very different approaches to important questions on climate. And we've highlighted a range of themes and tones as well. And again, this series I kind of view as a way of kind of opening up the conversation and helping people find a pathway into engaging with climate. And just as 2 examples to show kind of the range of artists we've featured, here's a recent post that we did of Yoshitomo Nara's portrait of Greta Thunberg. This work gave us the opportunity to reach a really broad audience and a new audience because of the collaboration with Nara's studio. And then something a little bit more local to the Climate Museum, we featured this new environmental justice play that was being shown off Broadway. And in this case, this was something we could encourage our audience to actually go see live in New York. So again, we use the arts to bring people into the conversation. It's also been a great way to be in touch with artists and develop relationships, even while we're not able to exhibit their work in immediate terms. So next is our Did You Know series, which is kind of the learning portion of our method. And this series explores different educational opportunities, whether that's new climate research, news and current events related to climate. We also feature different tidbits from previous exhibitions. And here the goal is to empower people with new knowledge that they can then maybe bring to a conversation with a friend or family member. And again, here we try to curate a range of themes covering a range of emotional tones. So it's a mix of both hard, bad news on climate, but also good news about progress being made. And I'll just show you 2 examples to kind of show both sides of that spectrum. Here is an example of a reel that we made about the Trump administration's embrace of the fossil fuel industry. And at the same time, the unpopularity of that embrace. Really, a majority of Americans support moving away from the fossil fuel industry entirely by 2030. And then at the same time, we share brighter spots. In this case, it's a new social science study about how to have effective climate conversations. So again, we are trying to empower people with this knowledge. And the final series that I wanted to share is our Commit to Action series, which shares ways to get involved in climate action here and now. Again, we try to include a range of ways to get involved because not everyone will be ready for every type of action. And the key is that these actions are civic-oriented, expressive, outward-facing, rather than individual consumer-oriented. We want people to be empowered to think beyond their own carbon footprint, because that is a concept itself that was created by the fossil fuel industry as a way to make us feel guilty and outscaled. And instead, we want people to be empowered to speak up and think about their spheres of influence and how they can make a difference in a broad sense. So here's one example. We encouraged people to call their representatives to make their priorities known. We give people step-by-step instructions on our website for how to do this. And we make sure people know that their phone calls get written down and that they don't necessarily only have to push their elected officials to do more on climate, but they could also thank them for what they have already done. And another example here is a commit to action post encouraging people to get involved in different fights against the fossil fuel industry, whether that is stopping a pipeline near you or supporting a local organization doing that work. Again, we always provide a link to our website where people can learn more about how to get involved. So just to close, at the end of the day, yeah, our goal is really for our audience and our followers to speak up in their own circles and create a ripple effect, whether that's on their personal social media or with their friends and family. And we really believe deeply in the power of museums to have a transformative effect on climate. And while nothing beats gathering in person, which we miss very much, not currently having a space, we still think social media can be a really powerful tool to build community and share empowering content and reach new audiences. And we really need this cultural shift and the public empowered to speak up in every area of their lives to achieve the policy on climate that we need. So I would encourage you all to follow along. We'd love to have you in our community. I'll drop the link to our newsletter and social media in the chat. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Saskia. Well, we have different approaches to the different themes we made in this webinar. And we have some questions from different participants. And the first one comes from Nilufar. Dr. Dahmali, your presentation focused on museums in social media between activism and ethical use. Given your deep experience leading ICOM Arab, how do you think museums can navigate the fine line between advocacy and institutional ethics when using social media, especially in regions where cultural communication is shaped by political sensitivity, or social constraints?
I think Mr. Dahmali, he lost his connection.
Oh, I didn't saw that. Sorry. So I will go with a question from Deborah to Daniel. Some of us are very concerned about the impact of AI in our environment. As individuals, we can turn it off when using browsers such as Google, but what can museums do in practice? Also, who's responsible for informing about the impact of AI if museums are also dependent on it?
That's a really good question, isn't it? AI is still pretty new for a lot of places, but it's not new as a concept in sort of computing terms. And I think we're still trying to work out where it can go and what we can learn from it as professionals. In my last job for Historic England, we trialed using Microsoft Copilot for staff. And one of the things I was really worried about was the ethics about giving it out to people. We couldn't afford to give it to every member of staff. We had 1,000 staff around the country. We could afford 50 licenses. So 50 people were given access to a tool that could enhance their workflow and make them better at their job. 950 people weren't given that chance. So some people could start performing at a high level, and they started to produce things for the public in terms of social media output or policy documents. Now, how do you know if it's actually accurate anymore? Was one of the things we had to check on as well. And it's always about the human being there. And one of the things that people are trying to do now is about label things that have been made with AI. So if you use things like Google Gemini, there's a little mark on them for images that says made with AI. Obviously, you can crop that out if you want to. So Saskia, for instance, could make something for her Instagram quite quickly with generative AI and crop that out if she needed to and put it out and say it's been made by us. So it's now a little bit about we're in a post-truth type thing, isn't it? World, aren't we? We're trying to work out what is real and what's not. And that video of I mentioned about the Louvre break-in that someone made with AI actually looks really real. And someone might watch it for the first time without a label and then go, that's actually how it happened. And they start telling their friends about it. And it's now about how we can tell people what's the real object. And it's not just AI. One of the things that I worked on in the last few years is around 3D modeling and making copies of objects. And one of the things people are really worried about is authenticity, or is it actually a pastiche of objects as well? So it's really about how you can make things truthful now, isn't it? and about whether we should be using these things and being clear and labeling what we're up to. But if we don't use it, we've sort of left ourselves behind. But we can have an ethical stance as organizations, say we're not going to use AI because of the climate impact side. Saskia, your museum might say we're not going to use AI at all because of what we stand for. And that could be your standpoint. And I think that's how you might do it. I think other speakers on the panel might have a view on this as well, not just me. So that's my answer. If anyone else wants to chip in, please do.
Thank you. It's a lot to think about, Daniel. Thank you very
It's
much.
a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm glad I'm retiring.
Okay, we have another question. And this one goes to Saskia, also by Deborah. Do you find that doing a series of Instagram posts as a theme keeps your audience coming back for more on that theme?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think, yes, that is the hope. I think especially with our Pathways to Climate series, the arts-focused series, we have heard anecdotal evidence that that keeps people coming back for more. We've heard that different colleagues or people would wait to look at the newest post, with their colleagues. So that was really nice to hear. And I do think that it is important kind of having the consistent posting schedule so that people know to expect it and kind of know that they're going to receive a certain type of information or type of content from you. In addition to that, though, at least for me, and for us as a small team at the Climate Museum, having that structure of a specific series that we know we're going to post every week really helps, just with my workload and with kind of managing what content I'm going to put out. So I think, yeah, for me, just having the structure really helps personally in my workflow. So I think it's twofold.
Thank you so much. And we have also another question for you from Deborah. You want to inspire people to action? Do you have evidence that they are doing that as a result of your social media?
Yeah. I think we have a few specific examples of evidence. For example, recently we have been organizing contingents to march at protests that have been happening here in the United States. So we see directly that people are seeing our posts on social media and then they are going to sign up to join us. And so that's kind of a very specific example. Also, we've done some different participatory campaigns on social media. We recently did a caption contest with the New Yorker cartoonist Tom Toro, where we made a call for people to write their own captions on this famous climate cartoon. And that in itself, that kind of expression is one type of activism, especially in this moment. And we saw people posting on their own stories and contributing to that contest. So that was a really fun way to engage. But then apart from that, it's really kind of measuring how many clicks different links are getting, but that's so hard to measure because someone might see our post and then weeks later feel encouraged to do something because they saw a post. So it's hard to measure, and we'd like to have more concrete measurements, but sometimes anecdotal is the best that we can get.
Thank you, Saskia. And Nilufar is sharing with us this question. It is possible for any of the speakers to answer my question. The original question was, how do you think museums can navigate the fine line between advocacy and institutional ethics when using social media, especially in regions where cultural communication is shaped by political sensitivity or social constraints? Is someone from the panel would like to take the question? Mayki, perhaps, Diego? I don't know.
Well, I think it depends. Thank you, Sergio. I think it depends of the role of the institution. In the case of the Museum Site of Memory of ESMA, we should teach what happened there, the crimes against humanity, their causes and their consequences. And we are, well, the museum is a public institution, an institution from the state. So now they have another communication policy. When I was the executive director, we choose a path of austerity and respect to the victims when we communicate in our social medias. If you can see the museums, the social medias, museum like Instagram, before the 4th of June, I say until I was the director, you can see many reels with testimonies of the survivors given to the justice, and I never, a ver, Sergio, si me ayudas, I never accept a pressure from my authorities, because I should maintain the institution as a state institution, not a government, not a party, not a political party. So it was, well, the main subject was the austerity and the respect for the victims, and teach to the audience how it's important to preserve and how we made our work. Not only show the activity of the museum, the direct activity of the museum.
Thank you, Mayki. And Daniel, you raised your hand.
I was going to say, I was trying to cover that slightly in my talk as well, around the soft power side, and the fact that I think everywhere has got some political influence on what's going on. And we're all trying to tread a fine line between keeping everyone happy. So we're all constituents, we're all stakeholders. There's always going to be someone with an agenda that needs pushing out there. And some of those things are, you've got institutional tensions internally. So everyone's got projects. So let's think about your museum. You might have an education department that's got a really good project, for instance, and they want the social media team to talk about it and spread it out to the world. But at the moment, the museum's focus is on, say, fundraising. So they're not going to put it out at the right time. So it's really hard to do everything for everyone. And I think we're also putting too much stuff on too many platforms at times. So it's not high quality. And that's one of the things that we're really struggling with. So I think it's a really interesting question that Nilofar's asked. But I think that fine line is everywhere. It's not just in those regions where we've got political interference all the time, but we're all trying to work out where politics fits in and how that social media can go out there. But who's actually reading it is the other thing, is with what I showed earlier, is it reaching the right people sometimes? And is social media the right platform for doing that sort of thing in the first place? That's my thoughts, but that's just, I can talk about it another time.
Thank you, Daniel. And Daniel is telling us this because he made a question that Nilufar respond. That is, do you think you have the skills and resources to thrive in this digital age for your museum? Does anyone else want to answer the question from Daniel?
Well, I can try to answer from my point of view. I mean, no, I do not think. I mean, most museums still struggle to use digital tools and artificial intelligence. I mean, beside all the ethical thing, questions about it. And and it's something that's very, I mean, museums are for 100 years are used to the idea that they have their sites and they have their public, and they are like a space where the public meets their collection, their professionals, and everything happens localized in time and space. So the idea to have this delocalized, I think it's a lot of museums still struggle with those ideas. And on the top of that, I mean, and then I can say from the point of view of Brazil, but actually out Latin America, I mean, we also struggle for having enough professionals in museum. So it's not unusual that the communication department's the one department that lacks the professionals to do a proper job in terms of having good communication digitally with the public. So yeah, I think it's still a big issue. I mean, especially from the region. I mean, there are, of course, there are wonderful examples, there are wonderful professionals, but if you look to the average, I mean, way the museums are dealing with it, not only 10, 15, but like the 1,000 of museums that we have, how they are dealing, they still struggle a lot.
Okay. We have more questions, so I will ask everybody that has to take it to be as brief as possible. We are over time now, but that's good in a way because we are happy to be here. Okay. Dr. Fatma asked Saskia if you consider that is needed a museum curator to be involved, or a media marketing person without knowledge about museums. I don't know if the question is clear.
It's not fully clear to me.
Okay.
But
let me try to reformulate it.
yeah.
Do you think the social media management needs a museum curator to be involved with, or a media marketing person who is without knowledge? You have two options, or to have a curator that doesn't know about social media, or a marketing person that doesn't know about the theme. What do you think about that?
Okay, I'll do my best to respond. Yeah, I think so. For me, I get to be involved in both sides of the work. So I help prepare our exhibitions, and I'm involved with the research and kind of thinking through the topics that we explore at the museum. And that work really supports my social media work, because we are trying to kind of make the content as engaging online as it is in person. But I guess that, well, I think for the Climate Museum, it is important that someone is as involved in climate and thinking through those themes as they are in social media and kind of digital platforms. So I do think both things are useful. I'm not sure if that is answering the question, but I hope that at least
Thank you.
touches on it.
Yeah, thank you, Saskia. There is a question from Lara, from our moderator. Mayki, what methodological challenges arise when translating trauma and testimony into online formats?
Well, I think we had many challenges about the communication of the museum. First of all, nothing is compared to visit the place where the crimes against the humanity were committed. So that's why the communication by our social media were austerity and respect for the victims, and with respect for the victims. And we had many debates about, should we have a TikTok? Should we have a online visit? And we discussed with my team, and we decide not to have tools, social media or tools that could be identified with banal contents. I don't know if it's clear, contenido banal o contenido de divertimento, ¿no, Sergio? It's okay?
Banal content.
Yes. So, and even though we were working for be part of the World Heritage List, it's supposed that people from all over the world, because in Argentina, that time of our dark history teach in the schools, and well, we used to have many public policies for the memory and to teach that part of the history. But we were working for be part of the UNESCO Heritage List, and that suppose many people from all over the world will watch our social media, our web page, and so we work a lot about that kind of communication, center in the austerity, the respect, and to teach some subject of some agenda of the governance of the institutions, about education, about conservation, about our research, and we not only use the social media to communicate all over the world, because we organize many exhibitions of our temporary exhibitions from all over the world. I don't know if it's the answer that you expect.
Thank you, Mayki. I think the answer was clear enough. And okay, we have several more questions, but we don't have time, sorry, to go for all of them. So I'm going to select one more, and I'm sorry, you will have to trust me. And this is for our colleague Diego. How might the spirit of Museums for Life be sustained or evolved into future forms of museum community solidarity? It's a question from Lara.
Well, thank you, Lara. We have been thinking, especially because COP30 is in Brazil this year, to develop a similar campaign regarding climate change. But it's not, there are subtle differences because when you have the pandemics, the situation we have that the museums were closed and they were actually looking for how could they fulfill the social role, which most of them, they didn't have this clear. With climate change, we still have to create a sense of urgency within the museums community. Not all museum world is, I mean, is convinced of the urgency of the climate change matters. So there's something we're still building within the museum community. There's a sense of urgency, and we hope to. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a similar campaign. We will have to do differently, but that would be quite interesting to see different museums to use their collection, to engage their collection, and get that to actually talk about climate change within the public, and promote, I mean, this collaboration between the public discourses and what we know about the scientific emergency about climate change. I mean, that's really more difficulty to design it, but that's something we are planning for. We hope we can.
Thank you so much, Diego. Thank you
Yeah.
to all speakers. Thank you, Sergio. Thank you, all participants. You know, we had a lot of questions, but unfortunately, the time runs out. So I'd like to close this webinar with a quote from Martin Luther King. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. So with this final remarkable quote, I concluded this webinar. Again, I thank
Lara,
you.
just wait
Lara?
a second, Lara.
We want everybody to put their face on the screen because my social media manager, Nilufar, wants to take a screenshot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
before we leave, if you agree,
Yeah.
please do
If you
that.
agree to show your face, we'd like to have a
We
screenshot.
will have to take 2 photos because we cannot be all
Okay.
of us in one screen shot.
Okay. Thank you. It's great to see everybody's face.
Okay, we are waiting.
As much as possible. A couple more.
So it would be
Marian,
great if
Jud,
everyone mutes their, mic to handle it very well. It doesn't work for me very well. I don't know. Maybe I'm not the host. I would like to request Christina if she can do this.
I have taken some photos already.
So thank you.
Oh, done? Screenshot
Done.
Oh, okay. So thank you so much to everyone, our brilliant speakers. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your time, really so much. And thank you to COMS, to Avicom, to Sergio, Cristiana, Marta, Nilufar, Eugenia, Joe, Keith, Deborah, Michael. Thank you so much. So I wish you good night and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you so
much.
much.
Gracias.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day or a great night.
Gracias.
Bye.
Bye bye.